Area's best selection of Ford, Lincoln, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and Wagoneer. Off exit 10 on the Parkway on Stone Harbor Boulevard. Call 609-465-5000 or KindleAutoplaza.com.
Thank you for supporting your local businesses from Town Square Media, South Jersey.
South Jersey's official play-by-play home of the Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers.
At 0 point would I ever consider not being a fan of the team.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square Media station serving all of South Jersey. This is Game Night with Josh Hinnick on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios, here's Josh Hinnick.
Thursday edition of Game Night with the Flyers back in action for their 5th win in a row. Sixers lose their final game before the NBA All-Star break. And, of course, Eagles still part of the conversation this week here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Join the show less than 20 minutes from now. Our Flyers insider, Kevin Durso, for 97.3 ESPN.com. Flyers playing the Maple Leafs tonight at 7 p.m. We hear all the action. Tim Saunders and Todd Fedoruk calling all the action. You can get it on your radio in 97.3 ESPN FM. And all Flyers games are free on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Download it for free from the Apple Store, Google Play, thanks to First Bank of Seattle. I want to start really quick with a couple of Sixers and Eagles thoughts, though, because watching the Sixers lose last night brings me back to the concern that I expressed a week ago. You know, when I was sitting here in New Jersey while, watching everything go on with the NBA trade deadline, I kept sitting here thinking, it's not enough. I remember coming on here game night and complaining about this. And now you're seeing the exact concern that I had for the last 2 weeks play out right in front of your eyes. I had said multiple times, I am concerned that this team does not have the ammunition to consistently win until Joel Embiid gets back. You saw in that Miami game last night, you lost by 5 points, which is in of itself a representation that you had a chance to win the game. You were in the game at halftime. You were in the game after the fourth quarter. And you were playing a Miami Heat team that themselves were shorthanded. No Jimmy Butler last night. But you still let them beat you. Now, part of the problem was the three-point shooting, right? They only had, 10 of 35 from three last night. I think the number was. If you're not making enough threes, it doesn't make up for what you don't have. And, no Batum last night, no Tobias Harris. I get it. You were shorthanded. But so was Miami. With no Jimmy Butler is a huge loss for the Miami Heat. And you're talking about a team in Miami that had 3 guys score more than 20 points last night. And they only beat you by 5. That in and of itself should tell you should have won the game. And I'm hoping that this period of them going into the All-Star break, hitting the reset button, is a healthy opportunity for them to get things figured out. To finally get this team focused on what they should have been focused on all along. Look, it's bad enough you're without Embiid. But I can't have my hope and prayers being leaning on Cameron Payne coming off the bench and him not able to hit a three the entire night. There was basically two guys who had good games the entire night. Maxey and Hield. And by the way, did anybody foresee Buddy Hield having a double-double in any Sixers game? He had 10 assists last night. It's ridiculous. I'm hoping that this All-Star break is opportunity for this team to hit the reset button, kind of like figure out what they want to do moving forward. Let guys get better, let them heal up so you can move forward and start winning games. Because when you come back from the break, I remind you, you have the gauntlet. Home against the Knicks, Cavs, and Bucks. And then on the road at Boston. Yeah, you come home against Charlotte, and that's a winnable game. But then you have a 2-game road trip at Dallas, at Brooklyn. Should you beat Brooklyn? Yes. But considering you're also the team that recently lost to the Atlanta Hawks at home, and you lost to Brooklyn, I'm not guaranteeing any wins at this point. And don't forget, in the middle of March, you have the back-to-back against the Knicks, and then you play the Bucks again. And don't forget the lovely road trip of at Phoenix, at the Lakers, at the Clippers, at the Kings. Yeah, good luck at winning any of those games if you play the way you did last night. Because they didn't lose because they were shorthanded. They lost because guys just couldn't get the job done in certain moments. Kelly Oubre has cooled off tremendously. And I got to give Mike Gill and the Sports Bash a ton of credit here on 97.3 ESPN. Because he had Paul Hudrick on, and Paul Hudrick said that he expected Oubre's role to be, basically cut down, that he was going to lose more and more minutes. And you saw last night the reason why for that. The guy couldn't hit a three. On a night where you needed him to be a little more electric, he gave you a grand total of 9 points in 30-plus minutes. It's not good enough. KJ Martin scored the same number of points as Oubre did. He played less less minutes last night, but scored the same number of points. I don't know what happened to Oubre. It feels like that he was one of those guys that you really felt could be a huge part of this team. And he just didn't do anything significant last night. And when you're a Sixers team that you're already up against the ropes without Joel Embiid, the turnovers, man. Maxey and Hield combined for 8 of the team's 14 turnovers last night. If your two best players on the court are turning the ball over, you're not going to win a lot of games. And this is where Maxey and Hield are going to have to start showing some maturity, because this offense is going to lean on them and Tobias Harris for this stretch of games after the All-Star break. Because when Embiid gets reevaluated next month, which doesn't guarantee he's going to be back anytime soon, you're still going to have multiple difficult games ahead of you. And when Embiid does come back, he's not going to be 100%. He's going to need a ramp up. So I am concerned that this Sixers team is going to really struggle at times down the stretch. And I don't like saying that. I don't want to say it. I don't like looking at the team that way, but that's how I feel. I'm hoping that this reprieve at the All-Star break will be what this team needs to get over the hump. Check out the text board in just a moment at 609-403-097. Don't forget, still coming up, Kevin Durso, our Flyers insider from 97.3 ESPN.com. He'll join me in about 10 minutes from now. I was asking a bunch of questions about the Phillies last night as they returned to spring training. And I already have a question about the Eagles. And that is, you see the news with Eddie Jackson being released by the Bears. And my question about the Eagles, is if you need help on defense, are we going to start collecting guys like they did the first year of Jim Schwartz's tenure with the Eagles? Remember, it was Nigel Bradham, but it was also Leotis McKelvin, right? Like that move worked out. And there were some other guys they brought in who were former Jim Schwartz guys, right? Stephen Tulloch was another guy at one point they brought in at linebacker. And I'm starting to wonder, are we going to see that with Vic Fangio? Are we going to start seeing a bunch of former Bears, former Broncos brought in here? Do I think Eddie Jackson could contribute something? Absolutely, especially considering that Sidney Brown probably won't be ready for the first few weeks of next NFL season due to his knee injury that he sustained. But I really am starting to get like first year Jim Schwartz vibes, right? Yeah, that first year with the Eagles where they were just like, well, you played for Schwartz and you played for Schwartz, and why don't you come down? You're the next contestant on The Price is Right. That's how it feels to me. And I'm not saying the Eagles shouldn't look at Eddie Jackson, but I just don't hope they look at Eddie Jackson just because he played for Vic Fangio, because he is not the Pro Bowl level safety that he used to be. And I'm hoping that people don't look at him as some sort of hero for this secondary, this defense. All right, check out the text board at 609-403-0973. Your DMs into 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Texter chimes in and says, Josh, you can't be serious. Sixers were missing Batum, DeAnthony Melton, Harris, Lowry, Covington. Heat were missing Butler and Rozier. Who played last night, even when we were 100%? Maxey, Hield, and Reed. Your complaint, and we're literally playing three people who will even... I think what the text trying to say is they think Sixers play people who typically won't see the floor in a game last night. Look, that's your opinion. That's your perspective. And just because it doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean it doesn't make sense to anybody else, okay? Laugh all you want. But I've seen... Listen, this is the NBA. These are professional athletes. You're telling me that the other guys on this team, Kelly Oubre, KJ Martin, you're telling me these guys shouldn't go out there and be able to perform? And you mentioned Hield and Maxey. I said it. Those guys had 8 turnovers combined. When your two best players on the floor are turning the ball over, it's a problem. See, I get accused of being literal here on 97.3 ESPN. I think the texter is here as being hyper liberal. Listen, you can laugh all you want, all right? But the reality is that it doesn't matter who the Sixers were missing. It matters who they were on the floor with. The Miami Heat missing Jimmy Butler is the equivalent of the Sixers missing Joel Embiid. And them missing Terry Rozier is the equivalent of the Sixers missing Tobias Harris. Sounds pretty even to me. Now, again, I might be wrong. This team could come out of the All-Star break and go on some crazy hot streak and win a bunch of games. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't win a game when they only lost by 5 and they were right in the middle of it. To me, if you're right in the middle of a game, you should have the opportunity to win it. Jeff from Ocean State chimed in and says, last night's game was entertaining with 25 lead changes and 12 ties. However, the crowd wasn't into it. There was no buzz in the arena. And that probably has something to do with the fact that there are no Embiid. The whole vibe that's going on with the Sixers of people still trying to figure out who's playing for the team from night to night with all the injuries they've been going through. But Jeffrey Roche is right. They were in the game. There was a back and forth going on. You could have won the game. You should have won the game, and you didn't. I'll get to more of your text in just a bit. 609-403-0973. Your DMs into 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Jack K. Courthouse. I'll get to your text a little bit later as well. But coming up next, talk about a team that's won 4 straight. Might be the best team in Philadelphia right now, the Philadelphia Flyers. They named the 20th captain in the team's history, Sean Couturier. What does that mean for the team moving forward? Let's go our Flyers insider Kevin Durso next on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City.
Stolen by winds up and throws it home on a windmill right hand. NBA All-Star Weekend on ESPN Radio. James Drive puts it up with an emphatic right hand. The 73rd NBA All-Star Game. Live from Indianapolis. Luka Doncic just won it for the Mavericks. The NBA All-Star Game. Tatum hammers a right-hand dunk. Coverage begins Sunday at 7 Eastern with tip-off at 8 Eastern.
Listen to the NBA all season long on 97.3 ESPN.
Hey, it's Mike Gill here. If you're car shopping right now, then I want you to go see my friend Rocco over at Key Acura of Atlantic City. Now through February 29th, he can get you into a 2024 Acura Integra lease for just $369 a month or a 2024 MDX lease for $489 a month. And beginning March 2nd, their service department will be open on Saturdays again. So stop in and see Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City, Tilt Road in EHT, the small but friendly dealer. Online at KeyAcuraofAtlanticCity.com. See dealer for details.
Okay, everyone gather around. I have some exciting.
Running her shoe factory, Kendra talks the talk and walks the walk.
We're switching to green energy.
She needs a biotech consultant to erase her carbon footprint.
All operations will net zero emissions.
Indeed can help her hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. You can schedule and conduct virtual interviews all from your employer dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Champion Exteriors, Champion, the one you call first. Voted best of the best in Jersey Shores. For roofing and siding, windows and doors. 24-month financing, no payments, no interest. You're certified GAF elite contractors. Champion-exteriors.com. Champion Exteriors, Champion, the one you call first.
Is switching your wireless service to Total by Verizon easy?
Totalmente.
And you get unlimited 5G data, $25 a line for 4 lines on the unlimited plan, at an amazing price with no contracts. Should you switch to Total by Verizon? Definitely.
Totalmente.
Find a store or switch suavemente at totalbyverizon.com. Monthly rate when you activate without a pay plus taxes and fees. Discount begins the month after you enroll. Additional terms apply. See website for data management practices.
And now, poem for all you lovebirds out there. Getting down on getting down. Some cars are red, others are blue. Trade in your old car and drive something new.
Fall in love with saving at Matt Blatt Nissan. How about 1.9% financing for 60 months on every new 23 Rogue in stock?
Oh yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
With over 200 new cars in stock and incoming. Come see why Matt Blatt is your premier Nissan dealer. This month only, lease a brand new Sentra for $259 a month with only $19.99 down. And with Matt Blatt Nissan's 4-day love it or leave it return policy, you simply can't make a mistake. Matt Blatt Nissan.com. Rate qualifications exist with approved credit. $27.78 per thousand financed on in-stock 2023 Rogues. Not all will qualify. Not valid on previous purchase. Go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details or call 844-917-4758. Price includes all costs to be paid by consumer except for licensing, registration, and taxes. VIN RY263938. Sentra sale price $21,520. Expires $229.24. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike. Harbor Township.
My friend and I are taking a trip to Mexico this year, but neither of us speak Spanish. So we downloaded Babbel and started learning Spanish fast.
Want to start getting conversational in another language? In as little as 3 weeks, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons were designed by language experts to be the most efficient and effective way to learn a new language.
¿Cómo te llamas?
¿Cómo te llamas?
Babbel, language for life. Celebrating 10 million subscriptions sold. Go to Babbel.com and start learning a new language today. That's BABBEL.com.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every basket, every game, every point, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. Whether it's a game-winning goal in the final seconds of overtime or a shot on goal in the first period. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be present in New Jersey. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Getting to the Flyers right now. This team has come out of their All-Star break looking pretty darn good, and they got the Maple Leafs tonight. And our Flyers insider Kevin Durso from 97.3 ESPN.com joins me as the Flyers made a little news last night ahead of today's game. Kevin, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing good. So Sean Couturier, the 20th captain in Flyers history. This was the team that said before the year they weren't going to name a captain. So what does Sean Couturier being named the captain at this point in the season, does that send a message?
It certainly does a little bit. And John Tortorella kind of discussed this a little bit this afternoon in his pregame availability, talking about how the room has really just come along in such a way that it felt like the right time. And, you know, it's funny. I went back in the story I put up on 97.3 ESPN.com this morning about Sean Couturier. I kind of went back to the quotes that Tortorella had about him following the Seattle game over the weekend, talking about his professionalism and his ability also to take a message when something would be frustrating him. He had a shot that deflected off of his stick and go into the net as the tying goal for Seattle, came back on the next shift after getting an earful from John Tortorella and scored the game winner and had a little bit of an emphatic celebration as if to say, you know what, I'll take care of this. I made the mistake and I'll take care of what needs to get done to get us back in the lead. And that's what you're looking for in leadership. And if you're looking for an answer in terms of the timing, I think the timing had to do with, at least a lot to do with, the fact that this was a guy in Sean Couturier who's been around the organization for a long time, obviously drafted by them in 2011 and has been with the team for 12 seasons now, but had health questions. And the fact that he's proven that he could stay on the ice to this point in the season, continue to be effective, continue to be that type of pro that they want him to be and that type of leader they want him to be, kind of warranted the decision. And that's probably the biggest reason for the timing, is when you're in the middle of a playoff race like they are, and this is the guy who's, you know, been around the longest, been around for adversity, come back from adversity, and can basically lead the way for your team and does all of the other things that you want the team to do well. He's a great two-way player. He's won a Selke Trophy before, so he's got national recognition for his two-way play. He can provide offense for you. He's great in the face-off circle. He kind of knows how to be that representative of the way that the Flyers have played all season long, to play in all ends of the ice, take things from the defensive zone, turn it into offense, focus on the details, focus on the fact that you have to outwork the competition, because it's not always about the talent level. If you work harder than everybody else, you'll find a way to win games some nights. So he embodies that completely, and his ability to overcome the last 2 years and become the player that he is again, you know, when there was so much doubt about whether that was possible, is a big reason why he's in this position.
When you think about where this team was, because you mentioned, you know, you wrote in the article about what the conversation was at the beginning of the year and where we are now. You know, you and I talked about how, hey, what does this team do coming out of the All-Star break? And they're on a 4-game winning streak, Kevin. And it's like another notch. It's like, all right, and here's the captain. And it's almost like the Flyers are like building to a crescendo now. Like I don't want to jinx it, but it almost feels like we're running a Disney movie at this point.
Well, and I did say last time we talked too, give them, you know, they've earned the right to have the opportunity to come back from the 5-game losing streak going into the break and show that was just what it was, a 5-game losing streak. Yeah, you don't want to see 5-game losing streaks pile up, but they had earned the opportunity to come back and put this thing back on the rails, and they did. And, you know, it's funny that you bring up like kind of the gravitas around an announcement like this, because so many of the other things that had gone on from an off-ice standpoint are kind of just around the room, so to speak, had been partially negative in some way. I mean, you kind of made the best of a situation with Cutter Gauthier and got a player in who's definitely been embraced in Jamie Drysdale, but it was a hit. The fan base was at a moment when the fan base was very excited about Cutter Gauthier because of his performance in World Juniors. Next thing you know, he's traded away. So that was kind of a little bit of a gut punch to the fan base a little bit, because it was something that came from out of nowhere. Upon explaining more about it, it was more understood, but still it was in the moment kind of a shock. And then you had all the Carter Hart news as well. And that was, maybe a little bit less shocking. That was kind of something that was hanging over the team for a while, but it hits you in a way. You're going to be, we're only human with this. You're going to react in a certain way as fans of the team, having watched this guy for so many years, that, now he's no longer part of the team and his future is very much in question. So there were some negatives surrounding that. And this kind of like puts a bow on the 4-game winning streak, so to speak. Like, this announcement really kind of adds to this whole thing and what they've been able to accomplish. It's interesting how they've won these 4 games too. They haven't won them pretty. It's not like they come out and they've just dominated every game they've played. So they found ways to win. It's very much the mantra of this team that they find a way. And, who better, and you're right. We've talked about Couturier a lot, kind of in a way. And that's one of my biggest surprise factors of this whole thing. This whole season's been a surprise, obviously, for where they are, but a big reason for it is I didn't expect Sean Couturier to be able to remain healthy for the entire year like this. I thought that might be a problem. He's proven me wrong. He's been able to stay on the ice. He's been able to contribute. He's certainly had some moments where it's a struggle, coming back from not playing for almost 2 years, but he's had nights where he looks great and he looks like he's delivering exactly what you expect from him. So his ability to do that has made everything about this more, not just the announcement, but has made the playoff run more of a realistic possibility because he's contributing in that way. And I thought that what John Tortorella said after that Seattle game is really important to how he fits into this puzzle. They can't afford for him to have an off night or be average. He needs to be himself. He needs to play to his strengths and do exactly what he typically does. That's how they end up winning games. And he's done that for the most part this year, obviously, for them to be in the position they are.
Told our Flyers insider Kevin Durso here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Flyers back on the ice tonight when they take on the Maple Leafs. 7 p.m. is the coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. But Kevin, coming up, the Flyers are going to be right in that spotlight again. They got not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 straight games on the national broadcast feeds. Saturday on ABC, Wednesday on TNT, next Saturday again on ABC, and then Sunday on TNT. So they're now a different tier now. They're a different part of the conversation. They got a whole new set of eyes on them coming up for the next several days.
They will. That was, it's not like that was something that was a result of their performance. It was actually just by coincidence. It was pre-scheduled that way. But yes, now that they are actively in the playoff race, that gives you some more attention. And I think that especially for it to be a national game, at all these national games at this time of year, and to be able to put them in front of more people that maybe slightly on the outside of the viewing area, but still have interest in the Flyers, that gives you more attention. And now you kind of have to deliver in those settings. Obviously the first one is a big one just because it's outdoors. It's the Stadium Series. That in and of itself makes it big. But you add in the fact that it's also a divisional game. The team that happens to be right behind them in the division is the New Jersey Devils now. So that adds to it as well. So there's a lot of things that right then and there are a big deal about it. And then you throw in the fact that the last 2 of those 4 are also divisional games. So he puts you right in the spotlight, not just on the playoff race, but also these battles within the division. It's been a long time for them. They've played a lot of, a lot of cross-country travel, a lot of teams in the Midwest or even out on the West Coast a little bit. They did Western Canada right after the Christmas break. So you have a lot of those things that come into play. This is all exactly what this time of year is about, playing teams within your division and figuring out how you stand against these teams, because somewhere along the line, and it's not something that I can say for certain at this given point because I don't want to put a team up against them, but you will face a team that could be one of the opponents that you face in the playoffs. So it becomes a possible playoff preview. And that becomes really big when you start to try to see how this team compares to the rest of the division. So it's going to be a test for sure. And it's a good precursor for them with some good built-in time off during the month of February to kind of brace themselves for what's coming in March, because March is going to be one of those really loaded down months with a lot of gameplay, not a lot of off days, a lot of divisional battles within there as well. So you're going to have a lot of important games then too. And this kind of is a nice way to ramp up to that with the attention, the significance of the opponents that they're playing, all of that. So I think that that's a really good spot for them in the schedule to kind of have all this happen.
Yeah, what Kevin's talking about, for those who don't know, is a 17-day period in March where they're going to be playing Florida multiple times, Boston multiple times, Toronto multiple times. It's going to be an interesting stretch in a few weeks because that comes after the deadline. Before we get to the deadline stuff, I did want to ask you, because you mentioned about this Saturday's game. I know from an optics standpoint, a lot of people are like, oh, outdoor game, very cool, all that stuff. But you mentioned on the ice how important this is, because the Devils are a team that is trying to get back into it. And historically, the Flyers have not been good. They have not. I think they went 1-4 in these outdoor games. So how does this year, how can they make this time be different in such an important game?
Well, I think for starters, I guess I'm going to quote John Tortorella again, because when he was asked about, he's coached an outdoor game before, and he was asked about it and didn't want to talk about it at all, because to him, this is not an outdoor game. It's another hockey game, and they're going out to try to win the game. And to an extent, I understand where he's coming from with that, because as much as it is a spectacle, your goal is to get 2 points at the end of the night. And if that's his mindset and that's the player's mindset, you kind of, you take all these other, take other athletes who play in this type of setting traditionally. So, let's go with the Eagles every Sunday. You're used to a crowd noise and the understanding that it's going to be a packed house and there's going to be a lot of things happening around you, but focus on yourself and focus on your team game and try to come away with the result. It's a lot more challenging to do from an NHL standpoint when these don't happen very frequently. And that's kind of where everything has to be channeled, and you have to kind of stay focused in that and kind of not let it encompass you too much. One of the interesting things about trying to separate the past history of these games for the Flyers, the 1-4 record they have in outdoor games, from this game, and I'm writing about this for tomorrow, is so many players on the roster have really never experienced this before, or have at least done this in a different setting. There's only a handful of players that are on the Flyers roster today that were on the roster the last time they had an outdoor game. And in some cases, you have to go back to the 2019 Stadium Series to find players that are on this roster who played, because when the Lake Tahoe game happened in 2021, the team happened to, at the time, be riddled with COVID. So some of their players didn't get to play. Travis Konechny did not play in that game. Scott Lawton didn't play in that game. These are guys who had experienced outdoor hockey before, but didn't get to play in that particular game. And you add in guys, Couturier's played in outdoor games before, and Travis Sanheim's played in outdoor games before. Even Joel Farabee got a taste of it with that Lake Tahoe game. This will be his first game in front of a crowd in an outdoor setting. And there's others. I had actually talked to Garnet Hathaway about this or on Monday, I should say. And he's been in one of these before, and he's still looking forward to it, obviously. But here's kind of the idea for you for how inexperienced some of the players on the roster are with outdoor games. Cam Atkinson's about as veteran a member as you're going to find on the roster, and he's never played in one at the NHL level. The only outdoor game he's ever played in was while he was in college at Boston College, ironically the same year the Flyers played in Boston in 2010. And he said the only thing he can really remember about playing in that game was he scored a goal, and the setting obviously too, but because it was Fenway Park and there's some history to that building and all that stuff like that. But the idea being that it's been a while for guys like that too. So there's definitely some energy behind that. But for a lot of these guys, I think that they're going to try to follow the lead of the coach and just try to take this as another game, and against the team that they've had to figure things out against. They split the 2 games they've played against New Jersey so far, and that's a big deal for them, but they need to kind of keep this thing going, because when it comes down to it, the points that you can get, especially against a team like the Devils that are directly behind you in the standings in the Metro, those will be important down the stretch. So it's certainly, you love the fact that this game, I think at the beginning of the season when we saw the schedule, many of us didn't think this game would hold the meaning that it does. And it's great to see that it holds this kind of meaning for the Flyers.
Flyers are going to have, 10 games before the NHL trade deadline, I believe. So, what do you think they're going to do at this point? I know you can't predict everything because hockey's a strange sport and we see weird stuff happen all the time, but I'm just trying to decipher what they're going to do, because it's like, you and I have talked a couple times over the last few weeks, and it's like, well, Scott Lawton and Konechny could be traded, but then they slap A's on their chests and make this big announcement. And it's like, I'm not saying they can't trade them now, but it kind of feels like, I mean, maybe I'm reading the tea leaves wrong, but it almost feels like that if they do make a move, it wouldn't involve one of those guys. Or am I reading this wrong?
No, because that's the second interesting element to the announcement from last night about the leadership group. Because Scott Lawton's been a player who's worn an A for the entire season. And he was the only player who wore an A last season too. So for a little while, when his name is popping up in trade rumors, and that's the only player you have in the room wearing a letter, that kind of feels like it's going to shake up the room a little bit, because that's pretty much the de facto captain. You don't have a captain at the time. Nobody else is wearing a letter. I guess that's the leader of the room. So if he were to get traded and there's nobody else, then I guess you're going to have to pick somebody who would become an alternate at that point if you weren't prepared to fully name a captain, if that was the way it was going to go. I actually think that maybe the read into this is that potentially there could be something down the line with Lawton a little bit more. I think you're absolutely dead on. I think you're dead on with Konechny. I don't think they would just slap a letter on Konechny's chest now and then be prepared to trade him in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's not going to happen that way. I think that instead the focus with that entirely shifts to pretty much July 1st. And when his window opens to get a contract extension, I think that that's the direction that's headed by that announcement, because I don't think you make a guy a first-time alternate captain, put a letter on his chest for the first time in his NHL career, and have any intentions of moving him. But in Lawton's case, it kind of gives them a backup plan now. They have an official captain. They have another alternate in place. It at least leaves the door open that if they were to trade him, the room is not completely void of players wearing letters anymore.
All right,
that's, I think, what sets up.
So let's zero in on that for a minute, because I think that's an excellent way to frame it. So if they made a room now so they can trade Lawton, okay, I want to rewind, because not everyone listening right now might have heard our conversation a couple of weeks ago, right? Because you and I talked a couple of weeks ago about what a Scott Lawton trade could be. And Elias Lindholm was the guy who was traded about, 3 weeks ago now? I believe he got traded. So when he got moved, there were draft picks involved in that deal. It wasn't like they traded, Lindholm for like some random nobody player and that was it. Like, that was a legitimate trade that happened between Calgary and Vancouver. And you had made the conversation with me before that might be the bar that the Flyers are looking at. They're not trading Lawton to quote unquote just sell or get a guy off the books. They're trading him to potentially get some legitimate value in return.
And that's possible. And I think that the other key to this discussion is that Lawton has more term than most players you're going to hear about at the deadline. The fact that he has 2 years remaining on the contract really puts the Flyers in a no pressure situation. They don't have to move Scott Lawton if they don't want to. And believe me, if they had it their way completely, they wouldn't move him. But if somebody comes to the table and says, listen, I got a first round pick this year for you, that might open their eyes a little bit and perk up their ears a little bit and say, okay, let's make a deal here then, because you've got something that we really want for the future. And Lawton's place long-term in the future may not be much further than what they've got going at this moment. That's where that conversation comes in. But they are not in any position where they have to do anything. And that's really a great position for Danny Briere to be in, where you don't have to come to the table. Think about back when they traded Claude Giroux around the deadline a couple of years back, and you come to the table and everybody knows what position you're in. Everybody knows that Giroux's the top selling piece. And when Giroux takes away some of the leverage as well, with only one location he really wants to go because he had a no movement clause, that plays into it. You get back what you get back. And ultimately, I know we've had a lot of time over the years talking about some of the things that Chuck Fletcher did and the mistakes made and all that. It may turn out to be one of the things that helps the Flyers in the long run, because the deal that was made that day for Giroux involved Owen Tippett and a pick that they haven't used yet. That's pretty beneficial to the team and was really making something out of nothing, all things considered. But when you enter the trade deadline situation with a player that everybody kind of knows is on the move because it's the last year of his contract, the team isn't in a position to make a playoff run, then everybody knows what's coming. I don't think anybody knows what to expect from the Flyers because they're in the playoff race. They're still listening on players that are on the active roster, and they've got guys with term that they don't have to move if they don't want to. So All of those things play a huge factor as you move forward in trying to decide what you can get. And as teams become more desperate and maybe throw more at you, you may be more willing to actually make the trade because you're going to get way more back than you expect. So I think that that's another aspect of this that Danny Briere is going to have to consider, is the fact that there could be even more coming than you think. And that's why, like, I think I kind of talked to you before about people would sit there and look at Scott Lawton and the type of year he's having, the type of player that he is, and think, how does a guy like that get a first round pick? When there's not a lot of centers on the market and the Flyers are dealing from a place of leverage like that, that's exactly how that can happen. So that's kind of a look inside of how these types of deals can maybe break down and how you could get something maybe more substantial than you expect for a player just because his numbers don't look as good or his role is a little different. If he fits what a team wants and they're desperate enough to get him, they may make you an offer you can't refuse.
And that's where I want to finish with you, because you mentioned about how there's not a lot of centers out there. Explain to everyone what the market looks like, because, when, like, for example, in a sport like football, right? Like, most people who are following football know, hey, this team needs a quarterback, or hey, this team needs a wide receiver, right? But in hockey, some of these guys are a little interchangeable. So, people will say, well, he's a forward more than a wing or a center, right? Because maybe that guy can do both positions. But, explain what it means when you say about Lawton, hey, in a market where there's not a lot of guys who could do what he can do, he's one of those guys who can be valued.
Yeah, and sometimes it depends on who's out there beforehand too. So Lindholm was leading the charge of that market, and as soon as the trade happens, everybody who wanted to get a center or maybe even entertain the idea of getting a center like Lindholm has to regroup and go back to the drawing board and see where else they can find players like that. And it's kind of hard to explain to an extent, because for most of the teams in the NHL, this is something that builds over time. There's guys that GMs are just calling each other throughout the course of the year, checking in on certain players, having discussions about things, and it builds as the year goes on and people figure out who the real sellers are, who's serious about selling, who's kind of produced more over the course of the year, who seems like the better fit for the role that they're trying to fill and to get from another team. And that's the thing. Lawton comes into play in that specific because of his versatility and not just in position. He's played wing and he's played center. That's one way he's versatile, but he's also versatile in the sense that the other day we saw him on a power play and he scored a power play goal. He's been one of their better shorthanded guys too, though. So you can put him out there pretty much anytime you want to in a game. And that might not be something you can say about another center that's on the market. You might sit there and say, okay, that centerman is a good power play guy, but I can't use him on the penalty kill. So maybe I don't want that. I need to fill a spot with a guy that does everything, not just one or two things as a specialist. So that can boost a guy's value, and that's kind of where Lawton's value shoots higher, is he's a jack of all trades. And then you can factor in the personality or the leadership qualities, the fact that Lawton's wearing a letter. That comes into play too. So teams think of everything when it comes to this stuff, and then on top of it, they'll call constantly to kind of get a feel for which teams are serious about this and which ones aren't. And that's kind of why, Tortorella kind of hinted the other day about they're not actively shopping anybody. They like their team. They like the room. They don't want to have to trade anybody. And Tortorella even said he doesn't think that anybody in the room wants to leave either. And I believe that. I see a tight-knit group that really likes being around each other, that nobody would want to leave given the way the season's going. But that's the decisions that Danny Briere has to make in terms of, it is a business. And if you're trying to do business beyond just what's in front of you this season, being in a playoff race, and you want this thing to go for much longer than this, you may have to listen on a guy like Scott Lawton if someone presents an offer that is good enough for what you're looking for. And that's where those first round picks come in, because that's really the highest value piece that the Flyers can get at this point. If someone comes walking in with a first round pick and is willing to go there, that's where I think you have to listen to some capacity. And let's face it too, one of the other qualities of this is, if you're a team like the Flyers in the playoff spot that you are, and have done what you have done to this point and won a lot of games in different ways, when some guys are clicking, some guys aren't. If your trade deadline strategy is being strategic about this, selling certain pieces, but not taking this whole thing apart, like let's say at the end of the day that the two pieces that get moved are Lawton and Sean Walker, two that we've talked about more than anybody else. If that's all that you do and you fall flat on your face after that and fall out of the playoff race, then you weren't a good enough team to be there to begin with. But if you're a good enough team to make the playoffs this year, despite moving you should be able to do it despite moving a couple of pieces and keeping this thing mostly together. So that's how we find out a lot about what this team is made of, because it's not just in terms of what they're doing now, in terms of answering the call on all of the other situations, like the 5-game losing streak to the break and coming back with 4 wins. It's also how they respond to the deadline and something happening possibly to the room, because nothing should stop the Flyers from continuing what they've started to this point. And that's a big reason why the leadership decision came down last night too, was they took pieces away from the room first to get it to a point where they felt like they could make this decision in the here and now based on what the team looks like this year. But you're going to have to continue to evolve it to get to where you really want to get to build what you think is a championship caliber team. It's not a finished product yet, just because they made a bunch of moves in the offseason and got rid of pieces last year and have a tight-knit group this year. It's not quite a finished product yet. There's still more to come. And that's what leads to really hard decisions like what's going to come for Danny Briere.
He's Flyers insider Kevin Durso, covers the Flyers for 97.3 ESPN.com at Kevin_Durso on the Twitter X platform. Flyers Maple Leafs tonight. Hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, Kevin will be all over the outdoor game, which is, as me and Mike Gill talked about, this thing is so confusing. So this Saturday is the Stadium Series, which is not the Winter Classic, which is not the Heritage Classic.
Correct. There's 3 different events every year. And, it's why for some people, it becomes a little, it's a little bit of oversaturation on the market here. There's a lot of outdoor games throughout the course of the year. When it was just the Winter Classic, it had some vibrance to it. So there's elements where it's lost it, but you know what, I think when your team is in one, it makes a difference too, obviously. So for everybody who tunes in on the station and listens to the games regularly, this is something that's special, and the players take it as something special. So it should be a great time. I'm interested in seeing what the setting looks like. I'll get my first look at it tomorrow at practice. So we'll see how it looks.
All right, Kevin, appreciate you jumping on, man.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Kevin Durso always does a great job covering the Flyers. Yeah, for those who didn't hear, so Mike Gill and I were talking on the Sports Bash, and, he asked, about the Flyers' past outdoor games. And I literally typed in Josh research manner, right? I said, NHL Stadium Series history. I didn't realize that the NHL Stadium Series is a different list than the Winter Classic games, which is a different list than the Heritage Classic, which is different than the Flyers Lake Tahoe game a couple of years ago. And so I didn't realize how many different variations of, as Kevin said, there's oversaturation in the market. So I had to joke about it because I had Kevin Durso trying to help me out. He was texting me in the 2:00 hour today, trying to give me some information I needed for the conversation. He was he was doing a good job helping me do my job, but it was still a funny moment. So, all right, well, Jeff, check about the text program. I promise Jack from Cable Courthouse, I get to his text and more on the other side here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN.
It's Flyers Leafs tonight on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Listen as Tim Saunders and Todd Fedorn bring you all the exciting play-by-play action. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. It's Flyers hockey all season long on South Jersey's radio home for Philadelphia Flyers hockey, 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
They are an elite division in charge of Jersey's most precious cargo.
Okay, team,
let's move. The New Jersey Lottery Scratch-Offs division presents new precious metal scratch-offs.
Jerry, this movie trailer music is giving me goosebumps.
I know, right?
Bronze, silver, gold, and platinum scratch-offs with top prizes up to $1 million.
Now playing at lottery retailers near you.
Go, go, go. Must be 18 or older to buy a lottery ticket. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Rated PT for play today.
Timmy, everybody. Great job. Next up, we have Samantha.
10 times better performance can make a big difference. Castrol Edge Motor Oil gives your engine 10 times better high-temperature performance. Castrol Edge, better oil for maximum performance. Now through March 4th, get 5 quarts of Castrol Edge or Edge High Mileage Full Synthetic and an oil filter for $36.99, only at AutoZone.
Claim based on Sequence 3H test versus API SP test limits.
Is switching your wireless service to Total by Verizon easy?
Totalmente.
And you get unlimited 5G data, $25 a line for 4 lines on the unlimited plan at an amazing price with no contracts. Should you switch to Total by Verizon? Definitely. Find a store or switch suavemente at totalbyverizon.com. Monthly rate when you activate without a pay plus taxes and fees. Discount begins the month after you enroll. Additional terms apply. See website for data management practices.
Rise and shine, Valentine, all month long. You be the commander-in-chief. The savings are presidential, and the rates are at an all-time low. At Mitsubishi.com. Get freedom from interest with 0 down, 0 interest for 60 months. Even if you're stuck in a longer lease, AJ the Trade Man will get you released. And all with Matt Blatt Mitsubishi's exclusive 4-day love it or leave it return policy. Have a job clearing $450 per week? You're virtually approved at MattBlattMitsubishi.com. Qualify online without affecting your credit. Then drive home in your new all-wheel drive Matt Blatt Mitsubishi Outlander SUV with no down payments and no interest. So bring any trade, no matter the make, mileage, or condition. Simply Matt Blatt Mitsubishi. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. $16.66 per thousand financed unapproved with Tier 1 credit. Rebates and incentives to dealer. Go to MattBlattMitsubishi.com. 844-946-2315 for complete details. Plus tax, license, registration fees. Offers can't be combined. Expires 3/4/24. So come in today and get your deal your way. Located right in the heart of Glassboro for over 30 years.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right. Y'all gotta try that Febreze car. Just right, just right, just right. Yeah. La, 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 la. Pick up 40 days of consistency. All over Febreze car clips right on your face. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face. When it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah. Breathe happy Febreze. La, 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 la.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, presto, you're starting to speak another language, like magic.
I love that Babbel's lessons aren't just robots talking. They're voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right.
If you want to learn a language, there's no faster, easier, better way than
Babbel.
Babbel.
Babbel. Go to Babbel.com and start learning a new language today. That's BABBEL.com.
Some people are easily moved.
Wasn't that just the saddest movie ever?
Whatever. Others, not so much.
Oh, look at the puppies.
It's just dogs, but smaller, so what? But even those who aren't easily moved.
Look, your long-lost brother's been found.
Oh, hi, Mike. Can be moved by us. Yeah. We're that good.
Use Clark's Moving and Storage in Rio Grande for your next local or long-distance move. Visit Clark's Moving and Storage online at clarksmoving.net.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennick on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Don't forget our Flyers conversations. Kevin Durso is being brought to you by Union Forge Vodka. Hey, Flyers fans, time to level up your game day ritual with Union Forge Vodka. It's on the Flyers with the best tasting vodka produced right here in the Philadelphia area. Grab a Union Forge Vodka bottle today when you watch the Flyers play against the Maple Leafs tonight and, of course, against the Devils on Saturday night, and hear both games right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, squeeze some texting before we get out of here. Jack from Cape Courthouse, long text, so I can't read the whole spiel from Jack, but I want to give him at least a little bit of time. He took time texting. He says, Josh, all these guys just started playing like 5 games ago together. You got to give them time. They don't know their roles right now, with not just Embiid being out, but Batum, Harris, injuries as well. I think they'll be fine once everyone gets back. He said, literally no one played last night, Josh. We should have won, I agree, but it sounds like you're saying you have no confidence going forward. Listen, it doesn't have no confidence, but to me, it's this team's all the things to figure out. And I'm not naturally a very agreeable person, okay, Jack from Cape Courthouse. So I hear what you're saying, but the team just won 2 straight games against Washington and Cleveland. So to me, the track record showed that you lost a few games in a row. What was it? I believe 4 games in a row, because they lost to Brooklyn, Dallas, Washington, and Atlanta. But then they won 2 games. So it kind of felt like they were starting to find themselves again. So when they have this loss like they did last night, the Sixers feel like a team that should be playing better, that should be doing more. And then when they don't, it's very, very frustrating. That's where I am, Jack. And I agree. they do need time to figure it out. And that's what I'm saying. Hopefully over the All-Star break is that time for them to figure this out. Jeff Summers Point says, Josh, not to be off topic, but did you know that Todd Pinkston was a coach for the Chiefs? I had no idea. He just got a ring. And it was a fan favorite, but I had his jersey and love when McNabb threw the bomb deep to him. Oh, good for you, man. Jeff Summers Point, you are a Pinkston fan. I feel sorry for you. Dan from EHC says, for the first time, Joel Embiid will be fresh and rested for the playoffs. He just needs a couple of warm-up games. We should be ready. Well, I disagree with that. He needs more than a couple of warm-up games. To me, I think Joel will need 5 to 10 games before he's really in game shape for the postseason. We're not going to find out if he's actually going to get that number up. I don't think he just needs a couple. I think he needs way more than that. Flyers hockey next. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN.
Are you already doing digital advertising sales? Do you know all about targeted display, social media marketing, the latest in SEM and behavioral targeting? If so, you could be Town Square Media's newest advertising sales star. We are looking for passionate sales professionals to join our media and digital advertising team. If consulting and connecting local business with their ideal audience for growth sounds exciting, let's have a conversation about you working for Town Square Media. The right career choice is all about timing, and right now is the perfect time to join our team as an advertising account executive. Our comp package is amazing with unlimited earning potential, including base salary, 401k match, and more, along with world-class training and plenty of room for growth. If you're competitive, driven, and have the ability to communicate great ideas, we want to hear from you. Reach out to Michael Rubel, Market President, at 609-910-5249 or visit careers.townsquaremedia.com. Town Square Media is an equal opportunity employer.